Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Let's Be Cops. Is kind of unusual for a studio film. It's not unusual because it's a high concept comedy. That's pretty normal nowadays. But it is unusual because it is not really a star driven comedy. There's not a major movie star behind this film. Major studios used to make comedies with no-name actors before, but that really hasn't been the case in a while. But Let's Be Cops is different because it's showcasing the talents of Jake Johnson and Damon Wayans Jr. In a way, it is actually kind of a star vehicle. It's very much like a star-driven movie. It's just made for actors who aren't regular box office movie stars. And even though they have great charisma and make this film worth watching and make it funny, the bad direction and writing and terrible plotting brings it down, even if their charisma can bring it beyond that. Two guys from Ohio, Damon Wayans Jr. plays Justin, and Ryan, who is Jake Johnson. And Justin is a video game designer who had his recent video game pitch totally turned down called Patrolman, and Ryan is a washed up college football player who's kind of acting. He was in a herpes commercial and he's living off the royalties from that. And then they're invited to a masquerade party, which Ryan thinks means it's a costume party, and they dress up as cops. But after leaving the party, they realize all the respect they can get and kind of like being cops. So they go around pretending to be cops until they get in a real case with a mobster and attempt to take him down, while also elevating their self-esteems from being in a terrible situation in LA by using the power they've gotten from being police officers. In a lot of ways, Let's Be Cops is a normal kind of cheap studio comedy. It wasn't made for very much money. A lot of studio comedies that are cheaply made aren't as low budget as this, but this looks fairly cheaply made, unfortunately. It borrows a lot from the Apatow style. It's not Judd Apatow has really nothing to do with this movie. I mean, maybe he walked by while they were shooting or something, but that's probably about it. It's definitely done in that cheaper Apatow style and falls into a lot of the trappings that I have with a lot of modern comedy, which is they try to combine the cheaper, looser Apatow style, which involves a lot of improv and a looser plot but high concept, which can work for you if you stay on that. And if they have a lot of improv to them, it can be really funny. Look at This Is the End, for example. But when you try to combine that with more of a plotted out comedy you saw in the late 80s or early 90s, which a film like this was more common during that time. However, the way that this is different from when there were more plot-centric studio comedies is that you can't really combine the two. It seems like an awkward pairing, because when you have to have a script where everything matters and everything leads to this and that, you can't have them kind of going off on little rants and side plots and doing gags that don't go anywhere as much. It feels like the film is dragging and it's more of a mess. And it feels like they put a plot in for whatever reason because they didn't know what else to do with it. And Let's Be Cops falls under that quite a bit. Now, this is directed by Luke Greenfield, who also directed a film which I think was kind of underrated when it came out called The Girl Next Door. That was kind of a surprising comedy, but he really hasn't made a film as good as that since. And this film, it just kind of starts. There's not really a proper intro. There kind of is, but it just kind of starts and then it's going and you're along for the ride. I don't think it's as well structured as his other films, and I'm wondering if it's like his attempt to be, more of a modern, cheaper, and more cheaply made comedy director that we're used to nowadays. I've lost faith in him as a director a long time ago, but I don't think I've really gotten it back through this movie. But I did really like Damon Wayans Jr. and Jake Johnson. If you're going to see the movie for any reason, it's for them. And they keep it interesting, their repartee together, their chemistry together, their comedic timing. It works out for the movie because it's really like what you're seeing the movie for, and it's the best part of it. My wife and I have been fans of Damon Wayans Jr. for a while because of Happy Endings, which unfortunately was canceled, but now him and Jake Johnson are on The New Girl, which I don't really watch, but they're a good comedic team and they kind of make it work a lot better than this material really should, and it makes me hope they'll be in a better movie. It's kind of a meh comedy with some pretty good comedic performances in it. I know this film hasn't had the best reception, and I wasn't really expecting much because of that, but I think they make it a lot better than the reception that this film has gotten implies. Even if I agree with it on a filmmaking level, I don't necessarily agree with it on a comedic acting level. It kind of shows more of the faults with studio comedies nowadays than the strengths with them. It's kind of a typically bad studio comedy, but it's a typically bad studio comedy with a good comedic team behind it, and I think that makes for a more enjoyable film than you'd really expect for something like this. Even if it's disorganized and messy, the only one who can really do the Apatow thing with a more structured comedy, is Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who did 21 and 22 Jump Street and the Lego Movie. They're better at it than anyone, and I haven't seen anyone able to do it as well as them. It might have a good comedic performance in it, but ends up being kind of a lackluster movie. And I'm growing sick of those kind of comedies. I guess that's kind of par for the course right now. This still kind of makes me wish someone would come along and change studio comedies and make them something other than this Apatow style that's just kind of taken over everything. It's just another lackluster big studio high concept comedy, and before you see something like this you should ask yourself, do I need another one of those? So if you have seen Let's Be Cops and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.